Let's get salty!
Hey everyone, Zeddy here again today with a brand new video, and we've done like a whole week of top 10s. I've barraged you guys non-stop with the best cards, the worst cards, underrated, and well, naturally, you guys commented quite a bit. Let's do the most overrated cards in Hearthstone history, and this one's really subjective. This one's really, I had a difficult time quantifying doing so. This is basically how I'm going to outline how this list works. Basically, for the most part, either these cards are like noob trap cards where like they're win more, people think they're good, only because they remember when they absolutely crushed their opponent with it, something like that, but overall the card wasn't great in a specific deck, or just cards that were really good that people think automatically assume are really good still in 2021 that just aren't that great cards anymore. The game has evolved to the point where they're just not that great. So let's get into it. Again, this one's gonna be heated. There's gonna be a lot of disagreements in the comments, so be kind. Don't hate on the video too much. It's really difficult to quantify this. And again, if you have your own suggestions, you have your own disagreements, all that, please comment, but keep it civil. This list was tough, but I'll give my reasons for each card and my reasoning for all this stuff. So let's get going and take a look at the most overrated cards in Hearthstone history. So starting at number 10, we have a mech, Hecklebot. It's a 4-mana 3/8 and Battle Cry. You summon a minion basically out of your opponent's deck, and people keep telling me every time I lose to like a combo deck in Standard, why don't you run Hecklebot? It's really good at destroying a combo deck, and it really is not. Hecklebot is like one of the worst tech cards ever, and I see people try it constantly or suggest it constantly, but it's just not very good. You're basically just throwing the dice when you play Hecklebot because, well, first off, it's bad against a lot of matchups. They're playing a lot of big minions, but second, you can't time it like a dirty rat. Rat, you can kind of get an idea when they're like assembling their combo. Hecklebot, you're just playing and you're hoping you yoink something out of their deck that might be ready in their hand, and it's just unreliable. It's bad in almost every way, unless maybe have like Rush with Dr. Boom, but overall, just really bad card. And it's one of those cards that get suggested, and I see on ladder way more often than I should, when it's just, it doesn't accomplish what you think it should do. At number 9, we have Spiritsinger Umbra, 4-mana 3/4. After you summon a minion, trigger its death rattle effect. This is one of those kind of like greedy noob trap cards where it can be okay in like very niche decks, but overall is typically just a really greedy card that's just not very good. Typically the most prolific deck it popped up in was like Q-Block, but even there, most people don't run that even today in 2021. It's just, the greed is never really worth running a 4-mana 3/4 that's just bad most of the time. It was really good if you had like Skull up already, and then you drop like, you get your Doomguard out and then you cube it and you automatically proc it, and it's just like, it was just a very greedy option, and for the most part the win rate on this card was always abysmal, and pretty much any other deck that wanted to do death rattle stuff you would run this in, it was just a no-go. You didn't realistically, you made your deck worse by running this card a lot of the time. Purely a greed option, and only really, you know, would blast off in like the most greediest of matchups. And again, how often are you running into that and just not dying to aggro because you put a 4-mana 3/4 in your deck? At number 8, we have one of the most overrated tech cards in history, and that is Eater of Secrets. The 4-mana 2/4 devours secrets, gains +1/+1 for every secret eaten. And every time I queue into a secret mage on ladder, every time someone in my chat's like, Zeddy, you should run Eater of Secrets to counter secret mage. It doesn't counter secret mage. It's one of those cards that it comes down too late. If this was like a 2-mana card like a Locker Crawler, maybe it'd be all right, but a secret mage, by the time turn 4 is hit, or you try and coin it, although it's going to get counterspelled, so that doesn't work, they've already developed usually like an Arcanologist, a Cabal Lackey, Kirin Tor Mage, and now they have a 4-mana 8/8 on the board with like Occult Conjurer. It's too slow. It's too slow. Sure, you can counter their secrets, but they've already taken the board and they just pummel you with it and kill you. Like when I'm playing a deck to beat Secret Mage, I don't run Eater of Secrets. I try and run more healing and more early game, because the way you beat Secret Mage is with tempo and healing, and this doesn't really accomplish either. It does have its moments. Don't get me wrong. Eater can have its moments where it feels really good, but overall, for a tech option against secret decks, it's just not that solid. Basically, its best use ever was just to proc Ice Block and get lethal damage back in like the old Agoro meta where you had like Burn Mage versus Secret Mage. But overall, Eater is one of those cards you would think would destroy secret decks, but it doesn't nullify the whole tempo effect that those decks have, and you just kind of lose to their board even if you negate their secrets. Number 7, and this is a spicy one, I am putting Snip Snap on the list. It's the 3-mana neutral legendary 2/3 mag with Magnetic and Echo, and yes, this spawned one of the most dominant decks in Wild history. It was a good inclusion in a lot of mid-range decks, but people sing the praises of this card like it's one of the all-time best cards of all time. When I was doing my top cards, my top neutrals, people like, where's Snip Snap? And overall, Snip Snap's a good card. It's a very good card, but it's not broken. It's just a solid card. And if you go into Wild, when's the last time you saw someone drop a Snip Snap? Like even Odd Rogue, all these mid-range decks, they don't run it. None of these mech decks run it. Maybe like a hand buff mech paladin could consider it, but those decks have fallen off. It's just on its own, it's just a decent card. It's not this meta-defining juggernaut of a card. It was like the summoning portal, the 0-mana echo effect that made it just so busted. The card on itself is just really good, not this absolutely insane busted card that for some reason a lot of people think it is. So it's overrated in that way, but absolutely 100% a playable good card that you won't feel bad putting in your deck. So kind of a spicy inclusion, but it's definitely overrated in that regard. At number 6, we got the guy on the thumbnail, the infamous 4-mana 7/7 Flame Wreath Faceless. When this came out, BGH had just got nerfed, and it was like auto-inclusion in aggro shaman, and it was really solid. But the thing is, this card was really solid because you had cards like Tunnel Trog and Totem Golem before it. When those cards rotated, the 4-mana 7/7 fell off the map in standard, and in Wild, it's like sometimes an inclusion in even shaman, because even though it's 4-mana 7/7, even though it's a War Golem 3 turns early, the game is so tempo based. Removal, like cards like Sap or Death or whatever, are so prolific in the game that even playing a 4-mana 7/7 that overloads you, if it gets answered, it's game losing. It's just still not worth it. That's how little stats typically matter in Hearthstone unless they're coming down unbelievably early. And this card just isn't that amazing. And people love to talk about the 4-mana 7/7 being this unbelievably broken shaman card, and it just isn't. It isn't one of even the top shaman cards. It's just middle of the road, decent card. Definitely nothing that really is like this egregious thing that went like way above the line that a lot of people felt a 4-mana 7/7 did. At number 5, we have Archivist Elysiana. Originally 8 mana, now it's 9 mana, but basically you put 10 cards in your deck, you get 2 copies of 5 different ones. And yeah, I can't believe how many people think fatigue matters in their deck. Elysiana is one of those cards that I see people throw into their decks all the time, despite the fact that like fatigue almost never matters, especially in Wild, where this card I see more often than not, or even in Standard too. And like people will just throw Elysiana and they're like, well, I get this value that literally is a dead card against 99% of your matchups. If it's aggro based, tempo based, a combo deck, Elysiana is just useless. It's only good in very specific matchups, and it was good early on. When it came out, Control Warrior was extremely good at the time, so that was a fatigue deck. It made sense, but that went away pretty quickly. But people kept running Elysiana and still do to this day, thinking it's good. And don't forget, the Discover nerf thing happened. You don't even get class cards offered barely ever. You get a bunch of like Bluegill Warriors and Chillwind Yetis and just awful cards that I still can't believe people run Elysiana. But you'll queue up ladder like some battle ranks, you will see Elysiana more often than you would think, and definitely one of those cards that are just that value just noob traps so many people. It's just not worth it. Number 4, we have Spawn of Shadows, the priest card that inspires and deals 4 damage to each hero. And I keep reading Spawn of Shadows, it needs to be nerfed, it's too good in Raza Priest. And it's like, no, Raza Anduin is too good. You could nerf Raza again, you can nerf Anduin again, you can nerf the way Raza interacts with Anduin. If you want to change that deck, you nerf that combination. Spot of Shadows is just kind of like a consequence of that broken interaction. You can do other stuff other than Spawn. You got like Squashlings, you got Prophet Bell, and you have all sorts of different ways you can deal a lot of damage. Hell, there's like this Inspire minion that adds 2/2s to your hand. You can even go ham with that. Like, it's just one of those cards that is good as a consequence of other things. It was unplayable before Anduin and Raza, and it would be unplayable if those things got nerfed again. It's a good card in that deck, but that deck alone, and is definitely not the core issue of that deck whatsoever. You nerf that, Spawn of Shadows, just like, it's just not the problem. It's like a whatever card, and it's unplayable in like 99% of other situations. At number 3, we have a legendary minion neutral, Kel'Thuzad, the ultimate noob trap card. It's like an 8-mana 6/8, and it resummons minions that have died each turn. So if your opponent on their turn kills something and they don't kill Kel'Thuzad, it comes back, and same on yours. Like it was a trap in Big Priest, people like, oh, I can summon with Big Priest and get stuff back, or just whatever greedy deck you're playing, but it's just so win more. It does nothing on its own. It's just, it was always a noob trap, and the only deck I realistically saw it being any good in at all was like the Darkest Hour Warlock, because you would cheat it out with a bunch of other stuff, and like, how in the hell are you clearing that board with Kel'Thuzad? But even then, it was still kind of a greedy win more option. It's just one of those cards that looks spectacular on paper, like, oh man, they can never get through my taunt, never get through anything. But on its own, it's just an absolutely terrible card unless you're winning by a ton. And well, only certain decks could get away with that, and basically none of them really could outside of Darkest Hour. And it's still a card you see pop up in greedy people's lists all the time, and it's just really, really not that good. At number 2, we have the rogue card Spirit of the Shark. It's like 4 mana 0/3 with Self for a turn, and it doubles your battle cries. And people just threw this card in their deck in Standard and Wild in so many different decks, like Mill Rogue, Lackey Rogue, all this, just trying to extract extra value. And the games where it pops off, it was spectacular, but always this card had a terrible win rate. It was never really that good. It was awful against aggro, which, I mean, come on, it's Hearthstone. Most of your matchups are always against aggro. Is there like really one of those like hipster cards, like, yeah, I did a lot of stuff with Spirit, card's busted, but overall it really wasn't that good. I know a certain rogue main literally lost like probably a bunch of hair over this. It's just not a fantastic card. It's not terrible by any means, but it certainly didn't warrant being in as many decks as it has, and hell, still is to an extent in Wild. And yeah, Spirit of the Shark was no Spirit of the Frog, as I mentioned yesterday. Definitely not the most impactful card ever. Before we get to number 1, I have a few honorable mentions. First being Ragnaros and Sylvanas. Didn't put them on the list because they are good cards, got Hall of Fame for a reason, but it's been years and years and years since they've Hall of Famed, and basically both of these cards see very fringe play in Wild today, but so many people still think they're like all-time great cards. Not really anymore. They would be average today, even released into Standard, which we saw when Ragnaros was reintroduced, I believe in Standard, in the Doom of the Tomb event. It saw very little play. It's just not what it used to be. Still a good card, don't get me wrong. Same with Sylvanas, but just not what they used to be, and still held to much too high a regard. Silas Darkmoon, a recent addition. People just love throwing this card into the deck because like it's a neutral mind control. But again, how many decks are running stuff you want to steal? And I've seen it in like so many decks, like even like Libram Paladin, just too many decks that just really shouldn't have this card in it, but they run it anyways. And lastly, this one's probably the most spicy on my list, period, is Spreading Plague. People are like, this card's broken, which it is, but it can be bad. People think it's like never bad. It can be bad. If you're facing like a deck that just doesn't play many minions, it's a 6-mana 1/5. Against like Control Warrior, it's a 6-mana 1/5. That's pretty bad. So in that regard, it's overrated. In every other regard, no, it's not. It's completely broken. But in that situation, it is. Now, our number 1 most overrated card of all time is Dr. Balance, Dr. Boom himself. 7 mana 7/7 neutral, summon 2 Boombots, and he used to be one of the most broken cards in Hearthstone history. No doubt, auto-include in like every deck for a very long time. Hell, my first golden legendary was Bolvar from GVG. First thing I did was disenchant him and make him into Dr. Boom, and I did not regret it at all. But it's been a long time since that card came out, 6 years. And when is the last time you saw Dr. Boom played on Wild Ladder? It just doesn't happen. But even when I released my like best neutral cards of all time, I had countless comments. How is Dr. Boom not on here? It's so good. It's just not anymore. It's not. It's just mediocre at best. It's barely a good card. You don't run it in basically any deck ever in Wild anymore, because it turns out a 7/7 for 7 is too slow, and the Boombots aren't as impactful. Even in Standard, the only way you can play this is if you're playing Blastmaster Boom and getting 6 Boombots. Then you're talking, but with just 2 Boombots, just doesn't do enough anymore. And Dr. Balanced, he's actually kind of balanced now. He's living up to the name. Just not ironically anymore. So there you have it. There's my list. Rip me apart in the comments below. I'm sure you guys disagree with a bunch, but let me know what cards you think are the most overrated as well. It's a really tough list to put together, but if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Have a great day, and stay salty, my friends.